Okay, I'm back with another book review. It's been a little bit, but I have returned with a review I've wanted to do for a while. This is Dulce Base by Greg Valdez, son of state police officer Gabe Valdez, and this has actually come to be one of my favorite UFO books of late, in that it really digs past a lot of the veneer of UFO mythology and gets into what Gabe Valdez, the father, discovered in his travels through with the state police investigating strange goings on of cattle mutilations, abductions, that sort of thing, back in the period of time from the mid 70s all the way up till he retired and then worked for NIDS. And there's some very interesting information in this about the organization NIDS, which I think was the National Institute for Discovery Sciences, but that was an organization run by Robert Bigelow. That there's some very strange things here, and if I'm to understand Greg correctly in his book, he states that one of the strange things that happened with that was Robert Bigelow assembled this group of scientists and high-profile researchers and people like Gabe Valdez to dig up all the information they could find on the cattle mutilation phenomenon and UFOs in general, and then report that all back to NIDS. And then instead of making that information public, they then treated that as private information. I think the original understanding by a lot of the people involved in NIDS was that NIDS was working for the greater public good, that they would release all this to the public. But instead, they actually took that and said, thank you very much, sent everybody home, and that was that, and had very strict confidentiality agreements with all of the people that participated in NIDS. So there's some very strange things, and he doesn't come right out and say it here, but I will as a private citizen and just speculating rampantly. It is implied, and I'm going to read between the lines and say, I believe what he's saying here about NIDS is that NIDS was either CIA or NSA front organization that was used to compile all this information, what is sometimes referred to as a vacuum operation, to clean up all this, to pick up all this information, find out what kind of intelligence was out there at the local level, and analyze it, and then hide it. So because all of the people involved in NIDS signed non-disclosure agreements, they were not allowed to then disclose what they had discovered in NIDS. So anyway, back to the main meat of the book. Greg goes through a lot of history of the Dulce area, and a lot of the rumors about a base there. Talks a lot about Paul Benowitz and his involvement in the belief that there was a massive underground base there. But his conclusion in this, that many of you will either love this or hate this, is he believes that there was some type of what he calls an off-site lab or some kind of base in the proper sense of the word, but not necessarily maybe a deep underground huge alien base underground. But he states that that was most likely connected to the Redding Ranch. And on my channel elsewhere, in between drone videos and me chasing my kids around, I've got some really good footage of the Redding Ranch. And that property is dotted with what would best be described as watchtowers or guard towers. So pretty strong evidence that something was going on there. Now, Greg concludes that a lot of this, whatever experiments, whatever crazy stuff was happening with cattle in the 80s, he believes that was all shut down probably in the late 90s, and that base is no longer active. And he also, this is another one of those conclusions that is not a popular conclusion. He definitely arrives at the conclusion that there are no aliens, that this is all a very terrestrial phenomenon, that this is most likely the work of intelligence agencies. Now, again, love it or hate it, he's basing that off of the kind of a ground level view of exactly what he saw. So Greg takes a very just the facts ma'am kind of approach, and I really appreciate that in his book. There is not rampant crazy speculation. The times he does speculate, he keeps that to a minimum and says so. Says that, I think this might have happened, but doesn't go off on grand rabbit trails. It's a very well sourced book, and unfortunately, at this recording, the Dulce Base website is down, and I don't know if that will ever be back up again. And it is very difficult to find the print copy of this book now. A print copy of this is going for a fair amount of money on Amazon, but as fate would have it, I think you can actually download this Kindle version of this for free, if not a very small sum of money. So well worth it. If you're curious about this, great information on the history of Dulce as it relates to cattle mutilations and some of the weird goings on there in the 80s and all the way into the 90s. Just as an aside, on the Redding Ranch, and I've got a video also on my channel about this. If I can figure out how to link to it, I'll do it at the end of the video. But my father and I drove out to Dulce in '97, in fall of 1997, and we found a road that, of course, this is prior to Google Earth or anything like that, so we were operating just off what we could figure out in the reservation road signs and all. And we found a road that went all the way around the mesa, the Archuleta Mesa. And on the back side of the mesa, we found this ranch. And as we were driving past this ranch, my dad was driving and I was in the passenger seat. I looked out and I thought, well, that's really weird. There's like guard towers on that ranch. That's crazy. And around that time, we looked in the rearview mirror and there was a plain white truck with red and blue lights following us, with the red and blue lights flashing. And it was just a one-lane dirt road. So I thought, well, I guess they want us to pull over. So I told my dad, hey, somebody's following us. We need to pull over. So we started looking for a spot where we could pull over. But again, this is treacherous terrain, and we were in a little Chevy Nova that had no business being on those roads. And we couldn't find a place to pull over. And they followed us for a little bit. And then we went around a turn and looked back, and they were gone. So to this day, I don't know if we were being politely encouraged to keep moving past the Redding Ranch area or what, but I do distinctly remember seeing those guard towers and thinking, that's really odd for a ranch. That looks like guard towers on that, or lookout towers at that ranch. Now, at the time, we didn't make much of that because we were looking for what we presumed to be a secret military base, underground alien base, that sort of thing. So we were looking for some kind of futuristic entrance to the underground world or something like that. We had no thoughts of this being located on a private ranch. So personally, I think there is very strong evidence that the Redding Ranch was involved in this situation, and Greg Valdez lays out a compelling case for that in his book. He has a whole chapter about the Redding Ranch, but great information. So much in here. There's some hand-drawn map from Paul Benowitz of the area. He, again, does a good job of separating fact from fiction, because most of the books prior to this one that I found in my library, I've got several about the Dulce Base, and some of them are just wild, incredible speculation. And this is one of the first that really does a good job of sifting out fact, fiction, and setting the record straight. And I really wish, if Gabe Valdez is out there watching this, if Greg Valdez is out there watching this, I hope that he will get his website back up at some point, or someone will take control of that and put that information up, because it's referenced several times in the book about the website having more evidence and more of the high-resolution pictures of some of the things he describes in this book. So great stuff in here. If you can find a hard copy, I would definitely get it, because having an actual hard copy you can dog ear and mark is, to me, that every good researcher needs hard copies of books for that purpose. But if not, you can definitely settle for the Kindle version. So again, big thanks to Greg Valdez for writing this book. Lots of good information in here. And if you're into looking into the Dulce Base phenomenon and that cattle mutilation phenomenon, definitely required reading.